Well, this is Luke from Joy 96.5, and I have the pleasure of being on site at Village of Hope. Again, this is only the second time I've stepped foot on the property, and every time I love the drive out here to Tracy, New Brunswick. I love the woods, makes me feel at home. I'm from northern Maine, and I love, the warm welcome. I got coffee and water here in front of me. Introductions all around and people sharing, just about themselves. So I love that. And so I want to give you two, I'm sitting down with two of you here, the opportunity to introduce yourselves. Why don't we start with somebody who maybe most of the people listening might know or have heard of. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Luke, and good to have you here at the Village of Hope today. You've been out for other events before, and it's always a pleasure to have you. My name's Andrew Vähi. I'm the founder and director at the Village of Hope here. And we first started a Village of Hope over in Estonia and now here in New Brunswick and several others as well. So I've been doing this now for about 25 years. Amazing. And it's all that we do. And so it's just great to have you here today to share some of our story with you.
Awesome. All right. And our other guest.
Yes. Hey, Luke. My name is Megan. I am part of the team here at Village of Hope, and I oversee the women's program.
Very cool.
Village of Hope has been around for quite some time working with men, and a few years ago they did take the step to bring women into the program. And after that, my husband and I made the journey from sunny South Florida all the way up here to snowy New Brunswick. So we are happy to be here and serve the ministry and see what the Lord's doing up here.
The sun does still shine above the 48th.
I hear that.
So that's awesome. I'm so glad to be here with you, Andrew and Megan. And, I wanted to give you a little moment, Andrew. A lot of people, know of the story of Village of Hope. You guys do an awesome job of traveling around and giving testimonies at churches. And a lot of people have known somebody who has been here and experienced the impact of what you do. So can you just share the heart of Village of Hope and what really happens here? What is Village of Hope?
Well, I guess the reason why we started the Village of Hope is because I was, there was a time in my life when I was throwing my life away to drugs and alcohol, and that had become a pretty big lifestyle for me. But one day I decided I needed something different in my life and ended up turning my life to God. And said, God, if you have a plan for me, surely it's got to be better than what I'm living now. And so here we are today building Villages of Hope, and that was God's plan. But I remember thinking to myself, if there was hope for me, there must be hope for somebody else. And I felt like that was part of my life mission now, to go out and try to carry the same message of hope to others who are struggling and battling the same way I did with drugs and alcohol, and the kind of the havoc that wreaks on your life. So that's all we've been doing ever since. I guess it was years ago. I was visiting down in the state of Florida, and there was a friend of mine, Frank Costantino, who was a bishop in the Charismatic Episcopal Church, and he asked me two things. He said, Andrew, what has God called you to do with your life, and what are you doing about it? And I remember I was going to a Bible college at the time out in Saskatchewan, and that really kind of made me think of what am I doing with these next steps in my life. And he said, why don't you come and train in the area that God has called you? So he opened the doors for me to come and train in his program, Bridges of America, down in Florida, down in Orlando. And from there, I ended up meeting Mickey Evans. And so that was the second program I trained at, which was called Dunklin. Still exists today, almost 80 years in existence. Wow. So I thought to myself, if I'm going to go do this work, I need to learn from people who've been doing it for a while. And I figured it would save me years off my life, to go and learn from others. And so that's exactly what I did. And trained there, learned everything we could, and went and took my great-grandfather's lands to build the first Village of Hope over in Estonia. And then today we have started here in New Brunswick, of course.
Right.
And the real heart of Village of Hope is basically an organized opportunity for a man or woman to get their life right with the Lord. Because that becomes the foundation of change, which when a person changes, true change happens from the inside out.
Right.
And when a person experiences that change, really after a while, drugs and alcohol they're not an issue for them anymore, right? And you don't do the same things you used to do. You have a different value system. You have a different way of dealing with emotions and hurts and wounds and so on, relationship struggles and so on, right?
Yeah.
And so really that's what it's all about. It's a 10-month process that we take them through here of discipleship where they're learning kind of a new way to live.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And we'll come back. I want to talk about the programs a little bit, but I'll let Megan talk about that from her perspective. And then we can talk about some of the life skills and the value that you're giving people while they're here, not just totally introspective, but contributing to the village. So Megan, I want to know, how did you even end up, moving all the way up the East Coast, breaking through that border and making it over here to the Great White North?
Yes.
How did that even happen?
God has a sense of humor, for sure. When I first met Andrew years ago, and when we first talked about coming up to visit, I told him I only owned flip-flops, so
Right.
I wasn't coming. But I've learned that every time I've said never to God, it always ends up happening.
That's right.
And this was one of the biggest lessons in that. So I went through an addiction myself. I, started out probably like most people, just dabbling, thinking it was fun, and it became quickly out of control and unmanageable. By the time I was 18, 20 years old, I was unrecognizable. I had become somebody I never dreamed of, and I just continued. I destroyed my family and was in and out of different rehabs and detoxes, but I just hated who I had become and felt like I tried to get clean and it just didn't work. But I grew up in a Christian school, and I always knew about God. But I felt like he was always kind of shoved down my throat. Right. And I didn't want anything to do with him. But I came to a point where I was facing prison and there was no other option. And I said, God, if you're not too mad at me and I'm not too far gone, then I'll do whatever it takes. And I ended up at the women's facility down there in South Florida that's affiliated with the one Andrew mentioned in 2011. And I came there to get sober. But what I got was a relationship with Jesus. Wow. And through that, and the healing I received and the truth I received and my identity not being based off of what I had done, but off of who I am as his child, everything began to change. And he really, there's a scripture in Jeremiah that says, your word is hidden in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. And if they asked me not to talk about it, I couldn't do it. Right. And that happened. There's this fire inside of me that I had to talk about. I had to tell people. And so after I graduated the program, I committed my life. As Andrew mentioned, like what is the Lord's purpose and calling on our life? And the Lord had told me it was to help other people like me. Right. And so for the past almost 14 years now, that's what I've done. Wow. I'm committed to helping other women that were where I once was. During that time, I met and married my husband. We have 2 beautiful children. He went through the men's program, and we served there for all these years until the Lord opened the door for us to come here. Right. Make it through that border, which was a journey, and join the team up here, because the Lord reminded us he doesn't just work in the beautiful state of Florida. No, that's right. He's the same God working up here, and people up here needed to hear and receive the same thing that we had. So I'm very grateful to join the team and to work with the women that are here trying to do what I did all those years ago.
That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that piece of your journey. And I think that's incredible how God brings us to places sometimes we least expect. I'm American myself, and I think it was a little bit of God, a little bit of love that brought me over the border. My Canadian wife was pretty alluring, but I found myself in ministry that I was actually, I went to Bible school for 2 years, thought I was going to be a pastor, left, thought I was going to be a teacher, thought I was going to be a social worker, found my way back to full-time ministry. And so I love the way that God works in our lives. And when you look at it from just far enough away, maybe you squint your eyes, it all kind of comes back, right, to where he wanted you to be. So I love that you're here.
You can tell from Megan's passion, it doesn't, it takes a lot of dedication, I think, for somebody. I hear a lot of people, they'd love to move to Florida this time of year
right?
and be a missionary. But you don't hear a lot of people in Florida saying. I remember when she said that about her flip flops. That's all she owned, and I thought she's never coming to Canada. And here she is. But the reason why is because of the passion. You can tell in her voice when she talks about recovery and what she likes to see for these ladies. She's a great teacher and great leader for these women because she's been through it herself. Number one. But also she just got a real desire to see other people change and succeed.
Yeah.
And that's what makes her great at what she does, And so her and her husband are incredible team members here, serving at the Village of Hope, and we're happy to have them here.
Amazing. And so you're kind of coming off of 7-ish months you've been here now, weathering your first winter. But what does your role look like, and what are some of those programs that support the women here?
Sure. So I oversee the women's program. So I'm in the classroom with them during groups in the morning, and we're, laying that solid biblical foundation.
Right.
I used to think that it was a boring old dusty book, and certainly wasn't something I could ever understand. It was too intellectual for me.
Right.
But when I began to understand it, and the Holy Spirit brought it to life, and I realized I can relate to those Israelites.
Yeah.
And if he did all of that and can use all of those messed up people, then maybe there really is hope for me. And so we spend time laying that biblical foundation so that they are empowered to realize they can understand it. It is for them. It's not too intellectual.
Right.
And we read it to be transformed, not just for information. And we're digging into, all of the coping skills. A big thing was, for me, like I mentioned, was learning my identity.
Right.
Was not wrapped up in the things I had done. And so we really have to spend a lot of time. Even the secular world, uses cognitive behavioral therapy to discuss how our thoughts and our beliefs dictate our actions. And so that's what we're doing, is we're really looking at our actions. What have they been? And what belief systems are underneath there driving those actions, and allowing the Lord to get in there and do what he does. Even in 12-step recovery, you have to admit that you're powerless. And then I'm reading the steps here, and in step 2 says, come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And that's what we need the Lord for, is to restore us and renew our minds, like scripture says in Romans. So we're really working on that renewal of the mind, and learning that identity and coming into some new beliefs that are rooted in the truth of who we are, in order to change the way that we're behaving. But we're also doing the dirty work of cleaning our hearts up and really taking a hard look at the things that we've done, as well as dealing with the ways that we've been hurt and the past traumas that the ladies have experienced. And we're laughing together, and we're crying together, and we're rejoicing alongside one another. We have a couple women right now that the Lord has really begun to work in the restoration process with their children. And it's just a privilege to watch that. Like you get a front row seat to miracles.
Absolutely.
And you almost become desensitized to them. I hate to admit that, but I'm like, do I stop and realize every day what I get to see? He's still doing the miracles, and it's really cool that we get to see that here at the Village. So I'm right alongside with them. Last night we had sports night, played a mean pickleball game.
Okay.
So,
awesome.
I mean, I'm living here and doing life with them day in and day out.
Right.
As well. So
that's awesome.
Walking alongside of them.
Yeah, that's what I love here. When I first came here, I was like kind of talking to the staff. Like, where do you live? It's like, well, 2 houses down. It's like, oh, okay, where do you live? Well, I'm 4 houses down. I'm like, okay, is there anyone who works here that doesn't like live in this block? And it's like, no, we all live here on this dead end street that ends with the Village of Hope. And I'm like, wow, like that's something different, but it's also capturing something so ancient and sacred that we see in the Bible, this communal sense of you are my neighbor and I will take care of you if you will take care of me. And hey, I might be the one who is employed here at Village of Hope, but I'm sure you've learned some lessons from these residents that you maybe you weren't expecting, or I'm sure there's some reciprocal learning happening. I love that so much. And so, there's the men's and the women's program and, all of these kind of group settings, and I'm sure, some one-on-one support if they need it. But talk about how does, the Village run, right? Talk about that a little bit, Andrew. What are some of those bigger programs, ways that you give people value, but you also give them an expectation that they're not just here to lay on the couch and see a therapist, but they're here to pitch in and work on themselves and the Village?
Yeah, absolutely. And And it's like Megan was saying, doing life, really. And if we're going to prepare people for life, then the setting in which they live has to be somewhat, lifelike, right?
Right.
I mean, we do cover a lot of their worries or responsibilities. They don't have to worry about paying their bills while they're here and doing things like that. That stuff's looked after. However, they do have a lot of demands on them, a busy schedule. So they have to get up in the morning early, make their beds, clean their rooms, go to breakfast, do the cleanup chores and so on. And that becomes part of their overall work ethic, right?
Right.
They have to, make sure that everything's neat and tidy. Even themselves, they have to shower every day and make sure they're respecting themselves, even, right? Because in addiction, you kind of leave a lot of that stuff on the wayside. You're not even looking after yourself anymore. So it's all about earning that self-respect back as well. So that's a process of saying, hey, I don't have to get other people to do certain things for me. I can do it myself, right? Because we have sometimes guys that teach their family that they're incapable. And so their family, out of love for them, tries to help them,
right?
But they end up doing everything for them. And so we got guys that are 35 years old and mom's looking after them as though they were still 12 or 13.
Right.
And so you got to break that cycle by becoming capable and having that confidence to say, you know what, I can do life. I can do this. I can work a job. I can look after myself. If I can manage this dorm room, maybe I can manage a house someday, or I can manage an apartment.
Yeah.
And then one step at a time, they begin to build back that confidence. But a lot of it is through the work and things that we do here.
Yeah.
We do have classroom time every day. Most of the morning is taken up with classrooms. The afternoons we go to work. So we have work sites here. We build shipping pallets. We have a sawmill.
Right.
We do maple syrup, which is coming up real soon.
Yep.
But we do construction here as well. There's probably things that guys have left behind here that they can bring their kids back someday and say, hey, you know what, Dad, this is where God changed Dad's life.
Right.
And when I was here, I remember building this house or doing this thing, and
that's cool.
And so they can show their children that and stay here and hang out and go fishing for the day or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's all. They've left a piece of themselves behind in what they've also created here.
Right.
At the same time, they're learning skills and building that confidence to go back out into the workforce.
Yeah.
Because, in addiction, sometimes you don't even work for a while.
Yes.
Some guys get to the point where they haven't worked for 10 years.
Wow.
And so they have to kind of build that all back. And it takes a little bit of time to do that.
Definitely.
So we try to do that here. We also build some things like cutting boards and things that we sell. We go off site sometimes and do some work with some of our partners. We've worked in greenhouses. We worked for chicken farmers, different things like that. Give them all kinds of different experiences. But a lot of these guys have actually ended up with jobs in these various places as well.
Amazing.
So that's been very good, I think. But the schedule's fairly full. We have evening activities as well. So we kind of go around the clock here, 24/7. Yeah.
No, that's great. I love that. And talk about a little bit before we move on to talking about the maple syrup, which I love. Tell me, there's some people who come through this program. I remember this the first time I visited, and I sat down for lunch, and I'm talking to some of these people, and they're telling me like, oh yeah, I contribute here now. I'm kind of I help with the women, or I help with the men's program, and I came through this program myself, and I felt like I had something to turn around, kind of like you were saying, Megan, that you felt like you had to turn around and contribute something. And so tell me about that. They can kind of contribute after as almost like this, leader who's just kind of been through it.
Yeah, well, we do that in two different ways, I guess. One, they could actually stay on for what we call servant leadership training.
Right.
Which is the program, like it's basically a 12-month internship where they learn how to follow staff members and do pretty much any aspect of the Village of Hope, everything from learning how to lead small groups, to deal with conflicts, to teach classes, to run work crews. So they're learning a lot of stuff just hands-on every day.
Right.
But we also have classes that we teach them as well about personal development and so on, and leadership skills and so on. But there's also another group of people that go back out and work jobs, go back to their families, but they would come back and volunteer. They might come back and volunteer for a day and do construction. Some guys have gone out to start their own businesses.
Okay.
And they've come back also to help here on site, brought their work crews with them and things like that. So that's been a real blessing as well. But we have people that come back and just volunteer. We had a graduate recently say, "Hey, we want to do Christmas for the guys," and so they come out, do a big breakfast for the guys, him and his wife.
Right.
And so they used to be here at the village as well.
Okay.
But they've received hope and they want to give that back, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think giving it back, whether it's returning to Village of Hope or giving it out somewhere else, is a real key part to an individual's success.
Right.
Right. I mean, if we don't give back somewhere and get on mission with our lives, basically we start to get real self-focused again.
Right.
And then we get selfish again. And for addicts and alcoholics, we tend to go back to our addictions.
Yeah.
And so a good way to stay out of that is part of that is just to give back all the time, to comfort others with the same comfort that we ourselves have received.
I love that idea that is so biblical, that Jesus spoke about it. You see it throughout Old Testament and New, that when you pour out, you'll actually be filled to overflowing, right? That God fills our cup when we're in service to those around us. So that's such a cool thing that you see that through this work. So, I mean, this is what I came for. I'm excited to talk about this. You guys have this maple syrup festival here at Village of Hope. How many, do you know, I just want to ask this question. How many trees do you tap here on property? Estimate.
I think we had 1,200 taps.
1,200.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool. So tell me about what's coming in March.
So as a Floridian that's never done this
Yes.
before, I'm very excited. So although this is an annual thing for the Village of Hope, this will be my first one. And I'm
Amazing.
very excited to see it. I have put maple syrup on everything
Good.
since moving here. So this is a day for all the maple syrup fans to come out and join us. It's also a great opportunity for people to come out and see our facility.
Right.
So not only will you get to come out and eat all the fixins, as we
Yes,
would say down
that's right.
south, anything you can put maple syrup on. We have all you can eat pancakes, bacon, sausage, beans. That's a thing.
course.
We put maple
Oh,
syrup on
yes.
beans now. All the orange juice and coffee and tea as well. But we even get to do really cool maple syrup taffy on the snow.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm looking forward to that. But aside from that, you get to meet all of our staff and residents. We can tour our sugary and the site and really see what this community, as you mentioned, is like out here.
Right.
It's hard to describe until you see it. And so it's a great opportunity to invite the community out. So it is coming up in March.
Awesome.
And we're going to do it 3 different weekends. And each weekend we will have 2 sittings at 9 a.m. and 11:30 a.m.
Wow.
So starting Saturday, March 15th, March 22nd, and March 29th, we will have a 9 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. sitting.
Okay.
You can call our office to make your reservations and reserve your tickets. 506-368-2600.
Okay.
And that's $14 for adults and $8 for children under 10.
Amazing.
And we usually fill up. So I'm quite interested to meet everybody and really looking forward to that taffy on the snow.
Yes. And it's your first time having the taffy on the snow. Listen, I grew up in northern Maine. Like there was 3 sugar camps probably in my small town of Easton, Maine. But I am ashamed to say I had toured the sugar camp, I had never had toffee on the snow until 2 years ago at King's Landing. I don't even know how that's possible. But it is an experience. I love that. I love maple syrup, and I grew up on, Mrs. Butterworth.
Yes.
So when I moved to Canada, my wife was very, very disappointed in me when I went to the store and grabbed, the syrup, in quotations, off the shelf. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, is this like not what, we should, buy for groceries?" She's like, "No, that's not maple syrup."
Yes. I've learned that that's called table syrup.
Table syrup. Oh, there you go. Look,
That's what I've learned
that.
since being here. So,
Okay.
But I like the real stuff now.
Yes, that's amazing. I love this. So I think that, everyone who's listening to this should come and check this out. We all want to visit a sugar camp every year. It's a part of our culture and our heritage as Canadians and Maritimers, I think. And so this is a very cool opportunity, not only to do that and to eat some delicious food with some delicious syrup, but to see this place. Because there's something about being here and, seeing the stream running through the property and seeing the energy that is within the individuals who whether they're on payroll or not, maybe they're in the program or they're in the leadership training, there is an energy and a passion for what they do and for their life that they found here. And so I think that's worth it alone to come and see. So I hope that everyone does. You guys are a part of our Impact Partners program, and, February is your month, and we're highlighting you. And there is 25 organizations that are supporting this, spreading awareness. And I'm so thankful for the churches and the businesses that have done that. We're hoping to bless you with a small financial donation from some of those partners at the end of the month. And I'm so thankful for the impact that you have and that you've also curated and allowed to happen here in the Tracy, New Brunswick woods, but also across Canada, in Estonia, and the heart that you and your village have for all those out there suffering with addictions and recovery. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Luke, for having us today and for coming out, taking the time to do this. I mean, you've been a real blessing to us, and we really love what you guys do as well. Being able to drive in the car and put this channel on that you don't have to worry about your kids listening to.
Right.
And not only that, but it's those days when you're feeling a little bit down and you're facing big challenges, and all of a sudden you hear something really encouraging or uplifting, and you kind of feel like you can take on the day.
Yeah.
And so really appreciate what you do as well. It makes a difference, I think, in a lot of lives.
Absolutely.
And so really
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Yeah, we just want everyone to know, that we're here, and for anyone listening, if you need help or your family member needs help, because addiction certainly does not discriminate.
Yes.
It doesn't care who you are.
Right.
And it's not easy to do it yourself.
Right.
And we just want people to know we're here. And, you mentioned those programs we do. We have a men's program. We have a women's program. We have our servant leadership training program.
Yeah.
We have a marriage program where if the person that comes in to the base program is married,
Right.
we're going to help in that area as well. So
Incredible.
we're really, about regenerating the entire family unit.
Yeah.
The impact that one person can have in their addiction, which is negative, has just as great, if not greater, of an impact when they turn it around,
Right.
in a positive way and allow the Lord into their life. So we offer that. We offer transition programs. I mean, we really, we're in it for the good of the community, the person, and we're committed to them for life. This is not
Yes.
just 10 months and we don't ever talk to them again.
Right.
These residents are family to us, and, we still get calls and, like Andrew mentioned, those visits. So we just want everyone to know that we're here. And if you need help, please give us a call.
Absolutely. Yes. And once again, to register for the event, to get in touch with you, to ask more questions, to refer, or to inquire about coming here, what's the best way to get in touch?
You can visit our website at villageofhope.ca, or you can give us a call at the office at 506-368-2600.
Amazing. Thank you guys again. I appreciate it. I love Village of Hope and what you do.
Thank you, Luke. Bless you.